forth a lot lately.
Yeah.
Taxes.
Do you have an apartment down there?
I have a house.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome to Living Arts. I'm your host, Jackie Suarez. Thank you for tuning in. I'd like to take this opportunity to wish you a very happy and healthy new year. This is our first show of 2012. Thank you for tuning in. We have a great guest for you, Mr. Bob Baldwin. He's here to talk about his new book, You Better Ask Somebody. A nice, I'd like to say expose about the music industry, but it's very informative. We're going to be talking about that. And also, he is the host of New Urban Jazz Lounge. It's an internet-based radio site. Basically, they're covering smooth jazz. And I'd like to welcome Bob to the show.
Thank you. Nice to be here.
Thank you for coming down, Bob.
Thank you.
So, what is the story with you? When did you get started in the music industry?
Oh, way back in the 1900s. My dad taught me how to play piano.
Okay.
I was about 4 or 5 years old in Mount Vernon, Yonkers, New York. He was a jazz pianist.
Okay.
I used to sit in his living room and he'd be playing all these great records and he'd hear me humming the melodies. He was like, you might have something there, son. So he taught me how to play music. I took classical music for a while and then, grew into, liking jazz more and more. And so here we are a few years later. 16, 17 CDs later, and lots of experiences.
So you play the keyboards primarily?
Keyboards and piano. I grew up playing piano. Grew up, playing music from Miles Davis and Duke Ellington and Count Basie and all that. And then, as I got older and started finding out that keyboards made a lot more different sounds, I started gravitating to that. But I still play piano.
Okay.
Nothing like the original.
Yeah, I guess your latest CD is
Never Had a Season.
Right, exactly.
And it came out about a month ago. It's a gospel jazz project I've been working on for a while, and we're just releasing it digitally right now. It'll be out physically, later on in the year.
Right.
But that was like my first fusion of jazz and gospel. Mm-hmm. Kirk Whalum kind of made it more popular about 6-7 years ago.
Okay.
I did a project with this artist named Tom Brown about 20 years ago, and it was so ahead of his time that stations were like, what are we going to do with this? We've never heard of this before, so we're not going to play it. So I said, okay, I won't do these anymore, so I'll just
go back
and do the stuff that I know they would play.
You waited for the rest of the world to kind of catch up with you.
Yeah, every once in a while that happens.
And you also do production, so why don't you give our audience an idea of like what role you play primarily in doing music production and some artists that you've worked with?
Well, music production is a function of just taking an arrangement of music, bass, piano, drums, vocals, and creating a canvas which creates a record, and then you got to mix it and make sure it sounds like something you'd want to hear on the radio. I've had a chance to work with great artists like Grover Washington Jr. and Chuck Loeb and Marion Meadows, Norman Connors, Phil Perry. I've had a great opportunity to work with a lot of wonderful musicians, great singers, and Chieli Minucci from Special Effects, Glenn Jones. It's been a great ride so far, and hopefully there'll be more people I'll get a chance to work with that I haven't worked with before.
No, I mean, like your resume is like none other. You've been around quite a bit. You've traveled over this past year to Dubai for a music festival. Why don't you tell us a little bit about that?
Dubai was interesting because, first of all, gas was $1.10 a gallon. let's start there.
I might have to move to Dubai now.
Everybody's driving Flexes and Hummers. They got rid of them here, but over there they're like, let's do it. But
you see those smart cars that have like?
Didn't see any. There was no need for
two-seater?
those. No need for those. They're into the big stuff.
Okay.
But had a chance to go out there for about a week and a half and play some jazz with some artists from England and Italy and mostly Europe. The funny thing about it is they set up this huge field and they set up all these stages. They build this wooden thing for the vendors. They spent like 4 months. There's like hundreds of people working on it.
Wow.
Then the concert goes on for like 10 days, and the next day they knock it down like it was nothing.
Wow, that sounds like kind of like Woodstockish, but it's like
Woodstock with money.
Woodstock with money,
Yeah.
exactly. It's for a longer period of time. Who were some of the artists that were in the show with you?
Well, Minnie Abear was there. She was here from the States. Peter White, Marion Meadows, saxophonist. And there was some gentlemen, a guy named Busi Kamalo from South Africa. Sidney Bradley here. Then there was a label called Trippin' and Rhythm based out of England, and they brought some of their artists over. So it was a great time. We had one band, and all the artists came. We learned all their music.
Okay.
Crazy part about it, while I was there, before I got there, I had dislocated my thumb. So I was playing the whole trip with a cast on. So it was
How does that happen? How can you manage that when you
very difficult.
missing a digit?
Well, you see, the cast was all the way up to here, and I was like, well, I'm not gonna be able to play if it's up to here. So about 2 weeks went by, I was starting to trim it down with some scissors.
Oh, okay.
I
got
got the fingers moving, got back to work. So
Oh, good for you. Good for you.
it was an interesting trip.
Yeah, it sounds like it was. I would love to attend something like that.
Yeah, I'm not sure if I'm gonna go back this year, but I would love to go back. Dubai was a great place, and they've got some really interesting music out there too, and that was nice to experience that as well.
Now, what are most people doing when you go to something like that? Because it is for several days. Did you find that was an international kind of setting, or was it mostly just people from the country attending?
There were some people in from Europe, but actually Dubai has a huge Eastern Indian population. So there was a lot of people from India. There was some people from Northern Africa, Sudan, and Egypt. So it's a nice blend of European, Northern African, and of course the Arabian countries.
Wow.
Yeah, so it was a great time.
Yeah, it sounds like it was. I'd like to talk to you about the New Urban Jazz Lounge. Now, you're the host, and you created the site, obviously. Now, the whole smooth jazz, genre has kind of fallen by the wayside. And I guess primarily because the CD 101.9 is no longer broadcasting that music. And why don't you talk to us about how you began the lounge and the whole story behind the smooth jazz decline?
It's funny you mentioned CD 101.9 because they flipped their format to a rock format. When they found out 2 years later that the rock format was drawing the same amount of people as the smooth jazz, they're like, well, this is not really what we planned. And then they end up selling the station to a all news. It's like an all news format on FM.
Right, exactly. I think they're calling it W8. I'm thinking ABC, but that's not.
Yeah, I forget what the name is. It's 101.9, but the funny part about it is why would you want to hear news in stereo?
Right, exactly. I was very surprised that they're going to have just a total news format on an FM, on the FM side.
Kind of defeats the purpose, I guess.
Right.
But so in 08, CD 101 went off the air. I got a call from somebody. I was driving up the Turnpike, New Jersey. Someone sends me a text and says CD 101 is going to flip the format to rock and roll at 4 o'clock. And this was like 2:30.
Oh, okay.
I'm like, you lying? Stop lying to me. So, an hour and a half later, I'm listening to the station, and sure enough, at the top of the dial, at the top of the hour, it went straight to rock and roll. Everybody was like floored. So right after that, several stations around the country flipped. DC, Philadelphia. For a while, there was no smooth jazz between Massachusetts and Florida. No commercial smooth jazz at all. You're talking about 1,000 miles, people had just completely banned the format.
So it's kind of like the domino effect. Now, not that,
Exactly.
New York, I guess, not like the radio stations are...
It was the one, though. CD 101 was the station that
tipped over
started
the whole thing, yeah. So, I found it kind of odd that the whole genre just kind of fell away because so many people are still listening and there's so many CDs released, of smooth jazz.
Yeah, it's not like the people that were listening...
There's money to be made,
Exactly. It's not like the people that are listening have,
gone away.
died off. They're still on planet Earth. They're still, alive, but for whatever reason, the powers that be under smooth jazz decided that, whatever reason, it wasn't a moneymaker anymore, and they decided to flip it. But the genre is basically 35 to 54, a mixture of black, white, Latino, and they're still out there because the funny thing about it is that they have a jazz festival in Washington D.C. every year.
Okay.
And last year they had 100,000 people show up in over 3 days.
Wow.
So they're there, and they're driving, in and out of, from an 16-hour hour radius. So, it's not like they're gone.
Yeah, we have one here with WBGO.
That's right.
Yeah. So, do you think a member-supported station would work? Something like WFUV?
FUV has definitely had their successes.
For, like just to get smooth jazz back onto the mainstream media?
I think it'd be a good idea. I think they probably have to expand their bandwidth just to get more people. But BGO's been doing a great job in terms of at least covering the traditional jazz, which, at least New York has that. And actually they've expanded. They moved their tower to New York City, so they're definitely, expanding. Yeah. But New Urban Jazz came about as a result of that, and so because I had relationships at different stations around the country, we developed some relationships, and so now we're at 21 stations in 10 states.
That's awesome.
So,
good for you.
And it started with 2 or 3 down south, and it just spread from we don't have any New York properties yet, but a lot down south, and we've got a couple down in Maryland, and we have one out in Hawaii and Alaska. So we're covering quite a bit.
So run us through what's happening when you're on the air. You're the host, so it starts at what time and what day?
Every station plays the show at a different time. So what I do is pre-record it for 2 hours, send it off via the internet, and through several other electronic mediums, and so by 2 o'clock on Friday, it's out there, and then the stations, they pop it at, they program it in the time slots that the stations are have it scheduled for. So and by Tuesday or Wednesday the following week, it's pretty much played at all the different properties. Okay. So we've been doing it now for 3 years.
That's terrific. And that's you can basically reach it by going on to www.newurbanlounge.com.
Yeah, newurbanjazz.com, and or you can go if it's at a station in that city, you can just listen to it at that time, or you can listen to it on their website as well.
Okay, awesome. Now let's talk about You Better Ask Somebody. Now it seemed to me as I was going through it that you're kind of roasting some of the things that happen in the music industry. So what was the reason that you felt you had to put pen to paper, so to speak, and write this?
Well, I mean, when you do anything for 25 years, you got stories, good and bad. So I just happened to just be writing down some things, and then I would put the Word document down, pick it up again a few months later, write some other things. Before I knew it,
it's been a work in progress for quite some time.
It's been about 4 or 5 years of work in progress. Okay. And then when I looked up one day, I was like, wow, I've got enough to write a book here. I was just making notes, and then it just evolved into creating a book. So it kind of helps me, it allows me to tell people the story, first of all, about what is the mechanics of the music business in terms of how the money is being made. And how the money doesn't get to the artist. Everyone else is sharing into the profits, but it never really gets to the artist like it should. And really, the light came on when I had a conversation with a great artist whose name I won't mention.
Mention it.
I can't. I can't.
You heard it here first, everybody, right here on the show.
When he told me he wasn't getting a royalty check, it just blew my mind, because this guy was like selling. And he's passed away now. Oh, okay. So in respect to his family, I won't mention his name. But when he told me he wasn't making any money as a royalty, I was like, you gotta be kidding me. Wow. That's not cool. So where does that leave me?
You got nervous, right? You got nervous for yourself.
Yeah. So he said the only way he was making money was on the road. So so he pretty much was on the road until he eventually passed, and he died at a young age, was in his mid-50s. And actually he played in Peekskill here. Really? Before he passed, a few months, so that's the only clue you get.
The only clue I get. Okay, well, we're going to have... Okay.
Search the web. No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah, absolutely.
But anyway, that led to me doing records and just basically taking ownership of the recording as opposed to getting money from a label and them saying, okay, we give you the money, you give us the ownership of the recording. So that was pretty much when he told me that the light came on. So that's kind of when I started jotting down some things about writing the book. So I teach people about publishing, how that works, how the royalties work. Then I had a couple stories in there, some experiences that I had to kind of clear the air on. And
now, if you were going to write cliff notes, so to speak, or bring out 2 points or 3 points about the book that you feel are absolutely necessary for anyone entering the music industry to understand and to implement in their own career, what would those things be?
I think the first thing would be ownership, meaning that rather than having somebody pay you to make the record, figure out a way to put the money together yourself and make it yourself. This way, at the end of the day, you own the product. I look at making records like building small condos. You build a condo, say the label says, go make us a record. So you're building this condo exactly the way you want it to be built. And then after it's done, they basically take the keys and kick you out.
Right.
Then you might be able to live there rent-free for about a year, but then after that, gotta go.
Okay.
So as opposed to that, you making your own project, you're controlling the, how it's developed, and at the end of the day, you still own it 10, 15 years from now.
Right.
So most artists don't understand the value of.
That's if they write the music themselves.
It's
obviously.
even beyond writing. You have one set of ownership, which is your writing, but the other
Publishing.
ownership is the actual recording.
Oh, the recording. Okay.
Recording contains a ownership as well.
I see.
So the labels are like, we keep the recording, so we can go ahead and make. Like Miles Davis keeps putting out records. He's been dead for 20-some years.
Right.
Every year he's putting out a new record. So the reason that happens is because the label owns his masters, and they're just
remixing it,
recategorizing it, putting new songs to it,
right? Best of
new artwork,
Got it.
But at the end of the day, he's not getting, his estate might be getting some portion of it, but probably not.
And what would be another point? Like you mentioned that the management contract is something that when you're entering into that.
Well, the contracts are very important because, and even with contracts, if you're signing a contract with, someone on the other side of the table that's no good, it's gonna be the same results.
Yeah.
You're still gonna get burned. So even before doing the contract, just know that the person that you're doing business with is on the up and up.
How would you go about making sure that they are on the up and up, or how would you? I mean, I guess get references and
references
speak
are good.
To some artists that they're currently.
Absolutely, absolutely. Yeah, don't just jump into a project, and also create some clauses in the contract that can get you out quickly. So that if you get into a bad situation, you get out of it quickly and not spending 6-7 years stuck with a contract and putting your career on hold.
Yeah, it's like a bad relationship.
Worse.
Right, exactly. Now, another point that you brought out was that I guess when you're having a live performance or when you're performing, you want to be sure that you're covered with certain venues, and you mentioned some pretty funny things about that.
Oh, I'm sure I did. But one of the things is before you get on stage and do your performance, make sure you've gotten all your money. That's the first thing, because once you do the show, you're at risk of not getting paid. And the thing is, an artist has to remember that if he's got a band, that his band members are his employees.
Okay.
So you got to look at yourself as being an employer who's hiring, a band, a group of guys, and you want to always keep them happy. Because if you're putting them on stage and putting them at risk for not being paid,
right,
they're probably not going to return your calls again.
Gotcha.
So I've had a really good relationship with musicians around, not only here in New York, but also in Atlanta and in LA. When I make a phone call, thank goodness they pick up, and they know when they hit that stage, you're going to get some money. And if for some reason I get burned, at some point, they know they'll get it eventually out of my own pocket.
Right. Isn't it, though, I guess depending on what type of an event, let's say it's a smaller artist, and they're just performing locally at a nice club or something like that, they wouldn't be necessarily a set amount of money that they're going to be
Yeah, that's a little different.
Yeah, because it might depend on how many people are showing up.
That's correct.
Is that something that normally the record label would be in charge of, or that's something that the manager would be taking care of?
whoever is responsible for, like if it's a restaurant, then obviously they're responsible for paying the artist. And in most local situations, in most cities, New York or any other city, probably not going to be able to afford a manager in those scenarios. So you just got to make sure you're doing business with somebody who's going to pay you that night.
Well, yeah, getting paid, obviously,
See, the artists are always going to be at the disadvantage because number one, they're doing music because they love music.
Right.
So most of them are like, oh, I'll do it. I love the music. I just want people to hear me play, or I just want to be able to play in front of people. So you're always going to get that element. So we will always be exploited.
Yeah, for sure.
That's just the way it is. So you just want to, minimize your losses as much as possible.
What are give me an example of a bad experience you may have had with, one of the things you also brought out in the book was that you want to be in a position where you're paying your manager and you're not on being, the one that's being paid by them.
Correct. Well, I think it's always important that the manager, you understand that the manager works for the artist and not vice versa. Some of them think that it should be the other way around, but without the God-given talent that the artist has to make the music, there's no product for anyone else to make. So that's the number one thing. I did a gig here years ago with a restaurant, and this is in White Plains.
Are we gonna? All of the culprits are gonna remain
no
nameless.
names. They're all no names mentioned. This is
a very discreet man we have here.
It was like one of the first gigs I ever did. I was in White Plains, and I was getting ready to do a gig with 4 or 5 of my friends, and all of a sudden the lights go out. Now, we're all trying to figure out why the lights have gone out when they've been on all day.
When that happened, I know what I would be thinking.
My good thought was that, well, he didn't pay the electric bill, and they just shut him off on a Sunday. Probably not. So couldn't find out, I guess for whatever reason, he had shut the lights off downstairs and didn't want to pay the band. And
oh, goodness.
Yeah. And it was only the gig only paid like $200 total. Oh. So it wasn't that much money. Yeah. So we weren't talking about 20 grand here. We were talking about $200, 1984 or something. So that was the first time I took somebody to court.
Okay, good for you.
$200. I won the case. He never paid me. So.
Do you find that being, and I hope I'm saying this correctly, litigious is in the best interest of the artist so that they know moving forward that, you're not one to be messed with?
Well, no, I just think it's important that if people do you wrong, that you just have a...
they should be held accountable.
You just have a justice system that will support you. That you just can't be taken advantage of like that.
Do you find that courts are favorable towards the artist or more towards the...
I think in most cases the courts have always been fair.
They've always been fair?
Absolutely.
Now, I wanted to talk about the Westchester Arts Council?
They have so many names, but
because I know their website is www.artswestchester.org.
It's artswestchester.org, but it used to be called the Arts Council, Westchester Arts Council, for many years. It's the largest arts council in the state of New York, out of about 92 arts councils. Just recently, they almost lost their funding because
budget cuts,
huge budget cuts. But we had to do a little march in December of 2011, and they decided to let the money go through.
Oh, terrific!
So fortunately,
so you're saying there was some type of
it was going to be a huge
demonstration,
almost
up in Albany, right?
Well, actually, it was Westchester based.
Okay.
But it was close to $750,000 that they weren't going to get.
Oh, goodness.
So yeah, we spoke at a lot of it was operating costs. Said they would have had a lot of personnel cuts because of it, but they decided they were going to allow it to happen. Thank you.
Yeah, right.
So we'll see.
It's a shame that
but every year they got to go through that.
Yeah, it's always the arts and things like that get
It's
cut.
always the arts. Why is it the arts? Like we're driving up the big bills around here.
Exactly. Without music and art and literature, where would we all be? So
take the music out of the universe for about 5 days. Let's see.
Nah, I couldn't handle it.
No music in the elevators. No music in the car.
At the dentist.
Dentist. Yeah, while they're taking your teeth out. You want to hear music when you're getting your teeth taken out, don't you?
Right. That's the best thing they've come up with. Putting earphones on somebody so you don't hear all that drilling. Isn't that like? So you've got some artists that are going to be, you have kind of an exchange. You've got the New Urban Jazz Music Series.
At the
So
Arts.
the Arts Exchange.
Yes.
Now you've got several dates here. We have on February 4th, Hiroshi Yamazaki,
Yep.
and he's the pianist.
He's a pianist out of, he's from Japan, but he's been teaching at the Westchester Conservatory.
Okay.
Excellent pianist, and he's going to have a quartet. It's quartet. It's a quartet, piano, bass, drums, and I believe a saxophone.
I think I've seen him. Is that the Westchester Music Conservatory on White Plains?
Yes.
I think I've seen him. He was playing with Glenda Davenport. I'm not sure if you're familiar with her.
Oh, yes, right.
Very nice man. And he's also the teacher of another guest that I've had here and a friend of mine, Doug Smith.
Okay, yes, right.
Guys, do you guys know one another?
I know Doug. Good guy. Good guy.
Brother Doug.
Yes, sir.
So then we also have on February 18th, am I pronouncing this correctly, Vanessa Thomas?
It's Vanice Thomas, and Vanice is out of Memphis, Tennessee, but she lives here now. Her father is Rufus Thomas, who's a great blues and R&B guy from back in the 60s and 70s. He had a big hit called Walking the Dog. It was before your time.
Yeah, I'm trying to search my mind for that. I'm trying to go back in the archives.
That's back when they had. That's back when they had records. Do you remember records?
Yes, I do.
The
As a matter of
12-inch
fact.
ones, the vinyl things.
Yes, I do.
You know, so
My mother used to, they were using tapes, I guess, when I started
Exactly.
listening to music. But she had a whole bunch of albums, and she was very particular about them.
hold on to them. Don't they're
They're
still
sitting in
worth
the attic.
something.
They're sitting in the
They're
attic.
still worth something. But Vanice has been here about 20 years, and he's done some production work with Freddie Jackson, and has worked with a lot of great artists around here. She's on commercials all the time. I see her on TV every once in a while singing for Aretha Franklin. So
Okay.
she's still very active. So she's going to bring her group to Arts Westchester on February 18th.
Okay. And I'll just go through this because we're kind of running out of time. We're going to have you back. We have Tony Jefferson March 3rd, and then we have John Patitucci on March 17th. You can find out information about this at www.artswestchester.org. And why don't you give our audience a way to contact you, a way to reach you, and some information about how to get a hold of your digital book.
Okay, you can go to bobbaldwin.com. That's BALDWIN, bobbaldwin.com. You can also go to, you want to check out the radio program, it's newurbanjazz.com, and there'll be information about the book at both places.
I highly recommend reading this book. If you're in the music industry or you're even thinking about getting into it, this should be your text before you even consider it. As always here on Living Arts, we are highlighting music and artists from the area. Please feel free to contact me at www.livingarts.westchester.com, or not .com, at, you're gonna have to forgive me, it's www.livingarts.westchester.com. We're going to be saying goodbye to Bob now. Where's the next place that someone can catch you performing?
I'm not doing anything here for a while, but if you go to bobbaldwin.com, something will pop up probably in White Plains in middle of March.
So then if you go to the website, you get the book, and your latest CD is?
Never Out of Season.
That's something to get a hold of as well. I want to thank you for coming to the show. This has been really terrific having you here.
Pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Thanks for tuning in. Catch us Fridays and Saturdays at 10:30. Check your local listings. And peace. Take care. Bye-bye. Very nice, very nice. Are you ever going to have a hard copy of the book?
I will. Probably. I'm working on